Well, and so tell us about Bernard's work at GE. What was he actually working on?
So Bernard started looking at supercooling, something he'd grown interested in during the war when he was working on aircraft de-icing. And he very quickly started working together with Irving Langmuir, one of the most famous scientists at the GE Research Lab, a Nobel laureate in chemistry. He had basically invented, what we now call plasma physics and all kinds of interesting fields and devices. He had grown interested during the war, as Bernard had, in weather. And he and his right-hand man, Vincent Schaefer, had decided to look into whether or not they could cause clouds, supercooled clouds in the atmosphere to precipitate, to rain or snow when they were holding supercooled water in them. And Bernard got drawn into this project, and very quickly they discovered that they could, in fact, make these clouds precipitate.
Right, and so how did they do that?
Well, at first, what they did was they made a cloud in the lab. They brought in a refrigerator or a freezer rather, and breathed into it. You cooled it down, breathed into it, caused it to have kind of moisture, supercooled moisture in it, and then started spraying it with various chemicals. There was kind of a serendipitous moment when Vincent Schaefer was doing this by himself, trying to find something that would cause the cloud in the freezer to precipitate. And it was a hot July day. The lab, of course, didn't have air conditioning in 1946. So he threw a block of dry ice into the fridge, and this precipitated the cloud. So they decided they would try this in the atmosphere. They waited until they had the right kind of supercooled clouds over upstate New York, and they flew off in an airplane and dropped a bunch of dry ice into the cloud, and sure enough, it kind of carved a path of snow in the cloud. Bernard then went looking for substances that had a crystalline structure similar to water, and discovered, after looking at many, many of them in the chemical manual, that silver iodide could potentially work. And so they tried that, and sure enough, that had the same effect.
Right, and so these guys, obviously, this was really, really exciting for them, and they're all just kind of like, wow, this is ushering in a era where humanity is just going to control the weather pretty much, with a very high degree of certainty.
Yeah, I mean, that was what Irving Langmuir wrote in his lab notebook the day of the first experiment. He wrote, "Control of weather." And GE introduced this, with a press release to the world in exactly that way. They said, we're now at the brink of a new era where we're going to just take control of the climate. We're going to steer snowstorms away from cities and towards ski slopes. We're going to cause it to rain in the desert and to not rain in places where there's too much rain. We're going to stop damaging hailstorms that, cause crop damage every year. They really thought they were on the verge of just, doing something about the weather.
Right, and they actually thought they were going to maybe be able to control hurricanes, and they actually did some experiments along those lines.
They did in 1947. This was something that they were interested in. The GE scientists were interested in from the very beginning, because obviously if you can steer a hurricane, you can cause it not to make landfall and not to cause, the millions of dollars worth of damage and loss of life that hurricanes cause every year. So the military got involved too, because, it occurred to them if they could steer a hurricane, well, they could really, kind of mess with Cuba or somebody that they wanted to mess with. So they caused a GE and the Army created a joint project. And one of the first things that they did once they joined forces was they attempted to cloud seed a hurricane in October of 1947.
Right, but that didn't work out so well.
Well, what happened was that the hurricane was heading harmlessly out to sea. They went and seeded it. Immediately upon seeding, the hurricane made a hard left, kind of like a dogleg left, and went back to the coast and slammed into Savannah and Charleston and caused all kinds of damage. GE immediately had to issue press releases saying, well, we did not actually seed the hurricane. And the military classified all the information, and everyone just went out and denied the entire incident. The lawyers, the GE lawyers, were having heart attacks this whole time, as you can imagine.